Joshua, it's a pleasure to sit here with you.
Glad to do it.
Yeah, nice. So many things to ask, huh? And such a interesting, trajectory, of course. But now that I know a bit of your history, I have also been. I see that your Radio Wonderland persona somehow also ties very much into the activities in this neighborhood. We're sitting here in New York talking.
And in the East Village.
In the East Village, yes. And this, I'm really interested to know a little bit about how that background brought you into that unique performance that you do as in Radio Wonderland. How is there any connection to that? I know that you have the background as a DJ, and I was just wondering if you would want to tell us a bit how you grew into your Radio Wonderland persona.
Well, there is a connection. There's a lot of connections, but I can't say how much of them are deliberate and how much of them are just my personality that happens to match. But I worked at the Pyramid Club in the 80s, and it was a seminal performance space, and I still imagine that the ideal audience for Radio Wonderland is something like the Pyramid, where there would be an act that was as much of a party as it was experimental, as experimental as it was a party. And there was no contradiction. And the best DJs would play in the clubs in New York where the most amazing performers also performed, whereas today they're kind of bifurcated. If you want to see a wacky performance with someone who has stage presence, then that's not going to be a place where the emphasis is on dance music. And today I'm using laptop technology, and normally and I'm doing dance music with a laptop, so then you would expect for there to be a light show and for the performer to be hunched over the laptop, and there's even a joke which is repeated again and again. Is this person checking their email or are they making the music? And my paradigm is where, yes, it's a party, yes, it's dance music, but there's a person on stage manipulating stuff, playing instruments. And so instead of touching the laptop, I have the steering wheel and the shoes, which were completely natural to me and completely in keeping with my background and my story. And it seems to fit okay with today.
Yeah, because it's very clear that the performative aspect of it is very noticeable, and it gives this nice combination of something which is very lighthearted in the way of a performance, but very committed in the way of experimenting, and very demanding at times also in the sense that it's not just about the party, but it's about a certain kind of party that explores different ways to perform, to make music, to use instruments, to have shoes as instruments, and to have a steering wheel as your controller. These are ways to control the music that are spectacular to watch, so this that aspect of it is clearly very important to you, because for modern controllers for making electronic music, there are very many and very sophisticated, but you stay with these that are so clearly related to Radio Wonderland and your persona. So this is also where I see this connection, and you have carried it all up till today.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of this started when all the equipment was high-tech, and it just got more and more low-tech. But now all my processing is inside the computer, and the controllers are all converted to computer control signals, to MIDI, actually. And my controllers are also much simpler than what you normally see out there. The wheel is simply a giant knob. And I love it that way. And people seem to like it too. It's amazing because the alternative controllers movement and the practitioners who program the Arduino and interface it with hardware want to have multiple parameters, multiple axes in which they can play around with their controllers. And I understand that effort, but as a performer and as a musician and a composer, no, I want the one parameter, and I apply it to different things. But the power of that one knob, making it giant, it's even more fun and powerful than I thought it would be.
Yeah, yeah. And when you perform, you're actually using live radio that's coming in from.
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. So it's funny because it's you could almost say doubly conceptual, because it's not just, oh, the wacky controllers controlling the laptop. It's also this strict concept of only using live radio. But it's so much better for me because I like focusing on the algorithms, on the performance, and the kind of processing that can be applied to anything I get off the radio. And the more common approach to that sort of material is to choose just the right sample and then manipulate it. And if I did that, then I wouldn't know if my algorithms were universally applicable, which I want. And also this effort to get just the right sample, and especially if I'm making commentary, to get just the right sample to make the commentary. What is the commercial essence that I can take from the radio? And that quest doesn't really interest me. As a I sort of feel like for some years I've tried to do that, to find the ideal sample, and I'm not interested. I'm more interested in grabbing what is the immediate context and seeing what I can make of it in real time. It means my algorithms are more rigorous and my performance is more rigorous by a certain standard.
But you need to be able to respond very quickly, because you will need to make decisions at the spur of the moment based on what suddenly happens. There's a change, there's a speaker, there's this music, that music.
Yes, well, I've always embraced that challenge. It's almost like I came from this strange planet where we were never taught that you could have a score and have pre-planned music. You know, like that somehow would deaden the soul or something. So live music is only live. And I realize that is extreme and maybe childish, but it's just how I go. And it gives me a certain kind of rigor. And it's funny what happens to me mentally. I'm so focused on certain aspects. A lot of it has to do with timbre and rhythm, and a very kind of roughly hewn sense of, well, how much of this kind of radio have they heard? How long has it been since I last retuned the radio? And so, as I'm focusing so much on those elements, I either miss or maybe just get unconsciously the verbal connections. So someone will come up to me afterwards and they'll say, oh, isn't it so funny how there was a song about dreams and then there was this other reference to the unconscious, and how apropos, and I won't even remember it, but I take credit for it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And so you have been, for your album, you have been taking a look at what you have done, and you have also been using that as an opportunity to look into the future, to think of how the coming years will be for Radio Wonderland and your presentations.
Yeah, that's true. All the tracks on the album are based on live concerts. So I went through something like 200 hours of live recordings and basically tried to find the funky bits, which is a lot easier to tackle than trying to get the best half-hour concerts as a whole. And I'm condensing the half-hour concerts, the ones that have the funkiest bits, into the funky parts. And that's much better, by the way, than going into a high-end studio and trying to get an ideal performance, because I'm relying on chance. So I get those magical moments because I reviewed all of these. But then as to, you mentioned the future, I found that I really needed to work with the low end. And I started to doing a kind of processing that I cannot do on stage now, but I know I will be able to. And it is enhancing, you could say, the live recordings, but I think in an appropriate way, and in a way that is pointing directly to what I'm going to make sure I can do in the future.
Yeah. So finally, do you think then that your performance setup also will change as you are changing a little bit your approach to the sound of? Will that also have an effect on your on the tools you will be using on stage.
Yes, the tools will change radically, but you may not see that change because it's going to be in the software. I want the steering wheel to become a much more high-res steering wheel, and I'm going to be able to do much more subtle and advanced processing. If I told you just how primitive it is, you might be amazed. I'm kind of amazed that it even works in a dance context, because I basically am taking live radio and making it into patterns that I then have the same power to mix as a Jamaican producer would have in the year 1973. You know, and one echo delay, some basic filtering and mixing. Once I've done all the high-tech slicing and dicing of the radio, it's very basic processing, which has been a fabulous discipline. But I made a deal with myself when I completed the software that I use, that I was not going to change one line of code or move one object, because it's Max, so it's graphical, until I had a record out. And that was in 2007.
Okay, so it's about time.
It's about time, and I'm bursting at the seams with what I want to do, but I'm going to have this record out, and I'm glad that it points to the future.
So maybe the steering wheel from this old Chevy, or what
it's
is
from
it?
A Buick, actually.
Buick will become maybe this more sophisticated steering wheel that we have nowadays, with buttons and things.
No, I don't want that.
All
it's going to be just a one-parameter steering wheel, and everyone who builds instruments says to me, "Oh, look, give it a horn or give it this other tactile thing," and I'm thinking, no, I love the connection with the audience. It's so clear. Everyone intuitively gets whether I'm controlling pitch in terms of melody, or frequency in terms of a filter, or changing tempo, or spinning it like a turntable. Everyone gets that this is a knob.
So it's great to know that certain good things will not change.
Thanks.
Gotcha.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Much fun.
Hey.
Guys. All right.